Los Angeles, January 1947. The war was over, the lights of the Sunset Strip were bright, and the city was overflowing with people looking for a fresh start. But on the morning of January 15th, the City of Angels showed its darkest face. Betty Bersinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter on Norton Avenue. It was a normal morning until she saw something in a vacant lot near 39th Street. At first, she thought it was a discarded store mannequin. It was too pale, too still, and strangely, it was in two distinct pieces. As she stepped closer, the reality hit her with a force that would change LA history. This wasn't plastic, this was a human being. The body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short had been professionally bisected at the waist and posed. Her mouth had been sliced into a haunting Glasgow smile, and her body had been completely drained of blood and scrubbed clean. Today, on Mindful Progress A Journey, we're stepping back into the shadows of 1940s Hollywood. We aren't just looking at a crime scene, we're looking at the life that led up to it. This is the story of the Black Dahlia. Who was Elizabeth Short? Before she was a headline, she was a daughter, a friend, and a dreamer. Born in Medford, Massachusetts, she was one of 5 girls. Her childhood wasn't easy. Her father abandoned the family during the Great Depression, only to resurface years later in California. Elizabeth struggled with respiratory issues and spent winters in Florida for her health. She was described as striking. Porcelain skin, piercing blue eyes, and hair she dyed jet black. Like thousands of other young women in the 1940s, she was drawn to the magnetic pull of the movie industry. She moved to California to live with the father she barely knew, but that relationship quickly soured. By 1946, she was living a transient lifestyle, moving between hotels such as Men's Club and the apartments of friends. The media later painted her as a delinquent or a femme fatale, but the truth is simpler. She was a young woman in a post-war world trying to find a place where she belonged. Think about the pressure of Hollywood in 1947. You're 22, you're beautiful, and everyone around you is telling you that you're just one lucky break away from stardom. But for Elizabeth, that break never came. Instead, she found herself drifting through the underbelly of a city that didn't care if she stayed or went. Let's talk about the week she disappeared. Elizabeth was last seen alive on January 9, 1947, at the Biltmore Hotel. She had been dropped off by a salesman named Robert Red Manley. For 6 days, she vanished into thin air. Then came the morning of the 15th. The forensic details, the autopsy revealed things the newspaper couldn't even print at the time. The bisection was done with surgical precision, missing the spine and vital organs in a way that suggested the killer had formal medical or taxidermy training. There were ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, suggesting she had been held captive and tortured for days before her death. This is where the name Black Dahlia comes in. It wasn't a nickname her friends used. It was a creation of the Los Angeles Examiner and the Herald Express. They were in a circulation war, and a grisly murder sold papers. They stylized her as this mysterious dark figure. They even called her mother in Boston, pretending Elizabeth had won a beauty contest just to get biographical information out of her before telling her that her daughter had been actually murdered. On January 21st, the Examiner received a phone call from a man claiming to be the killer, complaining that the news coverage was tailing off. A few days later, a desert box arrived at the newspaper office. It contained Elizabeth's birth certificate, photos, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen on the cover. The scent of gasoline clung to the papers. The killer had used it to wipe away his fingerprints. The LAPD conducted one of the largest investigations in history. They processed over 150 suspects. Because of the surgical nature of the crime, they focused heavily on medical students at USC. The top three suspects were George Hodel, William Heirens, and Leslie Dillon, and we will get into each of them. George Hodel, perhaps the most famous suspect today. He was a brilliant but troubled doctor who ran a venereal disease clinic. His own son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, later found photos in his father's belongings that looked remarkably like Elizabeth Short. Recordings from police bugs in Hodel's home captured him saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now." Next up is William Heirens, known as the Lipstick Killer in Chicago. Though he was in prison at the time of Dahlia murder, some theorists believe there was a connection in the MO, specifically the posing of the bodies. And lastly, we have Leslie Dillon, a bellhop and former mortician's assistant. He wrote letters to the LAPD offering theories on the crime that were so specific they bordered on confessions. Despite the letters, the fingerprints, and the thousands of interviews, no one was ever charged. The case remains open to this day. Elizabeth Short has been dead for nearly 80 years now. Her name has become shorthand for Hollywood Gothic, a cautionary tale about the dark side of fame. But behind the Dahlia was a girl who just wanted to be seen. The vacant lot on Norton Avenue is now a residential neighborhood. People walk their dogs and park their cars where Betty Bersinger once stood in shock. The world moved on, but the mystery remains. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive on Mindful Progress, a journey. If you have a theory, maybe you think Hodel did it, or maybe you think it was someone the police never even looked at, reach out to me on social media. I'll love to hear your thoughts. This was me, Darden Brooks, signing off.